SMU's defensive problems go way deeper than even we really realized, but the bye week could alleviate a lot of them.
You are Locked On SMU, your daily podcast on the SMU Mustangs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On SMU, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day as well. We got a good show for you coming up, a big show for you coming up to close out this week. But before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, powered by Mazda. Move and be moved. And coming up on our show today, SMU has got to be better during conference play in terms of situational football. How bad have they been? We'll talk about that in the second block. Plus, bye week goal number 4. And it will be a transitionary one as we start to look ahead to the conference opener at home against the Orange of Syracuse. Again, I'm Grayson Singleton. Let's jump right into it. So Scott Symons spoke to the media within the last 24 hours. And, it was I don't know if I want to call it a heart check sort of availability, but it was a rough one. It was a rough one where Scott Symons, who I thought performed nicely, I thought he opened up and was very transparent about what's been going on, which is why we're talking about it to lead off our show. But it wasn't an easy one where he had to detail a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff as to what had been plaguing SMU and led to the defense just not looking up to par. And a lot of those problems had a lot to do with a lot of transition, what had been going on. So Scott Symons and the full presser and the full availability I found on the Pony Express. But Scott Symons went into a litany of detail as to, well, this guy was out, this guy was moving around. Lamadrick Spencer is now out for the foreseeable future because he pulled a hamstring. So we've had to do all this reshuffling. Here's the problem with all that reshuffling and the injury woes that SMU has had to deal with on the defensive side. Scott Symons, and I quote, and this stood out to me. He said, "We haven't been able to have a 2-deep." And that's telling. Because if you don't have a concrete, solidified, functional 2-deep, the amount of players that aren't really sure what their role is can start to climb. Like, you have to know who the ones and twos are of everything. And look, that could be, anybody could be culpable for that. Scott Symons could be culpable of that, but also uncontrollables can also factor into there as well. Injuries and whatnot, players leaving, you got a corner that you thought was going to come into the portal, come in through the portal. That didn't happen. So there's been a lot of scrambling and just a lot of new. But the injury front and the transitionatory stuff that just has disallowed SMU to really have a 2-deep it's backbreaking. It really is. Now, am I here making excuses for the defense? No, I'm not, because they haven't been good enough. I've talked about that throughout the last, couple of weeks. So I'm not here making excuses, but these problems in the background are starting to make sense. And then when guys don't know, and Coach Symons hinted on this too, when guys don't really know what their role is, when guys aren't comfortable in positions and you don't trust them enough to put them out there, what does that manifest itself into? Well, what are some of the problems that you've seen with SMU's defense? They look a step slower a lot of times. Attrition catches up to them at the end of games, which in turn leads to loss of physicality, which manifests itself by poor tackling. So you start to see the progression here, and it starts to make sense. But it all goes back to there was so much in flux coming into the year, and then quickly injuries hit. I mean, you couldn't blink into the season. I mean, Alex Kilgore was gone quickly. Zakai Barker followed suit. Lamadrick Spencer followed after that. I mean, it is, and then that's what prompted the reshuffling of everything. Now, here's the good news, because I just presented to you through the first 4 minutes of that the cause for what we've seen, which has been disappointing. Here's the good news. Number one, Scott Symons in that availability says that we believe Jalen Milner-Jones is best at free safety with his length and with his twitchiness. Those are the characteristics that he cited. He believes Ahmad Moses played really well at nickel against TCU. Got the one holding penalty, but he loved how Ahmad Moses played in that game at that position. But more importantly, over the bye week, they have been able to really solidify a functional 2D. And what does that mean? That means you can take some snaps out of some players, out of what you're asking for some players, give them a little bit of a blow. Hopefully attrition doesn't catch up to you later on in games and really rear its ugly head as huge as it has. Keep that in mind too. I mean, it is really, really shown up. So there is light at the end of the tunnel here, but it all starts with, can you settle in? Which was bye week goal number 2 for me, if you remember on Wednesday. The defense just has to settle into these roles. And the shows are starting to build upon each other. If the defense can settle into their roles, the leadership can return and be on the field. I think you can get guys off the field for a little bit of time for the rest that they need so they can be fresh when it's go time in the fourth quarter. And I think you start to see guys playing better. Now, what makes me think that? Well, Scott Symons was asked a question about Isaiah Wokobia. How do you feel Isaiah Wokobia has played? And to me, I don't think Isaiah Wokobia, here's the best way I can say I think Isaiah Wokobia has played. He has not helped his draft stock. I don't think it has gone up in the first third of the season. Now, here's what he had to say. He has missed tackles. He has had problems with missed tackles, which is kind of strange and kind of an oxymoron considering that he leads the team in tackles. But he also stated that from each position group, they are up 4 to 5 missed tackles per game in each position group. And he attributes that to, we just haven't been able to get guys off the field. And not off the field as in getting the offense off the field on third down, getting guys off the field in terms of rotating. Guys are playing way too many snaps. And part of that has something to do with Isaiah Wokobia's tackling, taking a step back. But it all comes around back to bye week goal number 2 and where we are in the calendar. If they are able to solidify their rotations, who they trust where, and are able to give guys a break, I thoroughly believe this defense can be better. Will it reach the levels of dominance that it was at last year and then in 2023 when SMU had its swan song in the American Conference? No. I'm not there yet. I don't know if I ever will be there this season. But they can get better and they can be a functional unit. But they have to settle in to where everybody is going to be. Otherwise, this whole thing doesn't work. Because at that point, you will ride your horses into the ground. New York Knicks, Tom Thibodeau style. That's what's going to happen. So, very transparent press availability. And by the way, Scott Symons took accountability. He's like, there's points in the game where I have to call the game better. He did say that. And look, he'd be a dummy to push back against that. Which Scott Symons obviously is no dummy. But he has not called games well in certain spots against TCU and Baylor. So, he knows he's got to be better. He also knows he's got to be better at getting guys on and off the field in terms of rotations. But ultimately, if they can just settle things down in terms of the movement and the fluidity of the lineup that we've seen in the first 4 games, SMU can start to really put some quality things together, and maybe the rest of the season starts to look a little bit better. All right, coming up next. Speaking of the defense and them maybe not being able to get guys off the field on third down, SMU has been situationally poor in their 2 games against Baylor and TCU. We'll talk about the importance of improving upon that as we go on through the rest of the season. Keep it here on Locked On SMU. We are brought to you today by Mazda. There we go. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is I'm going to go back to Kevin Jennings, how he continued to keep SMU in the game. Boy, he put on the cape and even, sacrificed some health in the process too. Throwing the ball down the field, moving and making plays with his legs. Also the fact that, yes, he threw the 2 interceptions, but dude, that was going to be your best way to possibly come back and win that game. So Kevin Jennings, talk about propelling SMU forward when the other side of the ball just wasn't holding its own on that particular night. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Hey, make sure you subscribe to the Locked On SMU YouTube channel. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, would love to have you a part of this SMU community. Appreciate all of you that already subscribe and listen every single day, including those of you on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, Grayson Singleton here. By the way, you can follow me on Twitter at Gray_Singleton2. It just popped up there. Now let's get to situational football. One of the things that you don't really like talking about, but if you differentiate between the good teams and the not so good teams, or really any kind of hierarchy, situational football generally is what differentiates between those two. So why do I bring that up today? Well, Scott Symons, in that press availability that I mentioned in our first segment, talked about, there were just times where we didn't do a good enough job getting off the field on third down. And so I went back to the TCU game. And I went back to the Baylor game. And I was like, okay, what does it look like on third down for SMU's defense? And if you want any sort of reason to attribute the attrition kicking in late in the fourth quarter, look no further than these stats. Against TCU, SMU allowed the Horned Frogs to convert 9 of their 17 third downs. That's greater than 50%. The Mustangs allowed Baylor to convert 8 of 18 of their third downs. That's around 45%. So combined in the 2 games that you've played against Power 4 teams, TCU and Baylor have converted 17 of, quick math, 35. That's about 48, 49%. You're not going to beat good teams like that. It just won't happen. Especially when you factor this in. In those 2 games, SMU itself was 9 for 23 on third down. So they are markedly worse against their opponents when it comes to the third down. Like, it's just not even close. You're getting blown out of the water there. Also, in those games, you lost the turnover battle. Actually, no, you won the turnover battle against in the Baylor game, and then you're basically even in the turnover. You're even in the turnover in the Baylor and TCU game. So there's no separation there, and the field goal kicking, the special teams, which special teams is 100% the epitome of situational football. The Colin Rogers missed kick. Missed kicks, plural, against Baylor. I mean, that's kind of what lost them the game and kept Baylor in it. Not able to convert in the red zone. How about the no catch by Jordan Hudson? Like, that's situational football. That takes points off the board. Everywhere you look, when it comes to the Baylor game and the TCU game, some of them have numbers, some of them don't to back them up. Some of them we just have to rely on the eye test and the fact that you and I watch the games. SMU's biggest downfall, it is not the quarterback turning the ball over. It is not the defense and the numbers that you see that the defense is giving up, and it's not good. It is situationally, SMU has been far inferior to their Power 4 opponents. Plain and simple. And you can say, well, that's on coaching. Well, coaching can't really explain missed field goals from inside 40 yards. Coaching can't explain when you had a dude that made a bunch of 50-yarders last year, and then you put him in for the first time to do it this year, and he misses it miserably. Like, that's not on coaching, okay? That's not on coaching that you missed 9 points in missed field goals against Baylor. That's not on coaching. Third down could be. Third down definitely could be. But again, extenuating circumstances sometimes can lead to that. And also, Scott Symons kind of got outcoached situationally by Kendall Briles in that game against TCU. So there's more culpability to go around than meets the eye. But ultimately, those trends have to change. You cannot get blown out of the water on third down. Because let me tell you something about third down. Third down does one thing to one team and another thing to another. Third down, for the team that's successful, it turns the tide of momentum. For the team that's unsuccessful, especially if that team's on defense and you're not able to get guys off the field, that is backbreaking. It's demoralizing. It takes stuff out of you. It's like when somebody just runs the ball right down your throat. And they just run it down your throat and run it down your throat and run it down your throat. Baseball analogy for you. We're coming up on postseason baseball. Pitcher keeps getting to 2 strikes. Can't put batters away. You're grinding out at bats. All of a sudden, dude bloops one over somebody's head. Infield single. Or not even infield single. Just a bloop single. And you were down to 2 strikes. Right? Like, that's the sort of back-breaking feel that has when you consistently can't get people off the field on third down, especially when you're allowing them to move the chains on third down more than half the time. Like, that's just inexcusable. That it's a losing formula. So when we wrap all of this up, and part of what I want to do in this show today is wrap up the first third of the season. We're through the non-con. Everybody's now 0-0 as it pertains to getting to the conference championship and, getting an automatic qualifier into the CFP. Everybody's starting from ground zero, starting this week. So you have to be better at situational football. They just have to. The turnovers, look, against Power 4 teams, you're even. That was one of my key points of emphasis going into the season, right? SMU was one of 2 teams that got into the CFP last year with a negative turnover margin. So far against Power 4 teams, because I don't really care what you did against East Texas A&M and Missouri State, so far you're even in that category. So some kind of improvement, I guess, but not really a great one considering that you lost both of those games. But third down's got to be better, and the kicking game that I talked about yesterday has to be better. Now, I'm going to give you some halfway good news. Even though they've lost the time of possession in both of these games, they haven't been blown out of the water. Which tells me this. It tells me this. If they stick to what they can do so well, SMU could really neutralize some of their deficiency they have. And that is if they can run the ball and grind out games and chew up clock and move the chains and lower the number of possessions, man, SMU can win some of these games. They really can. It's an age-old trend now because of how many times I've said it. But if they can avoid being in shootouts and they play things at the pace that they dictate, SMU can be okay. Now, eventually against teams that are just as big and just as physical and just as good on the line of scrimmage as you are, you're going to have to open it up. I'm aware of that. But anytime you find a deficiency in this team, there is always a silver lining, and they just have to lean into the silver lining. They do things well that can mask some of their, shortcomings. If they can do that, SMU can be in a position to be okay. They really, really can. Coming up next, we'll wrap things up with my final bye-week goal of the season, or of the week, rather, as we begin to turn the page to Syracuse. Come back with me on Locked On SMU. It's almost the weekend, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered the most. Let's go ahead and break this one down. So let's talk about the offense of Miami in that game against Florida. And Florida, great defense. Miami goes out and scores on the first possession. Then all of a sudden, it just kind of doesn't look right. But then eventually, what happens? They run the ball down Florida's throat, ice the game using that bruising offensive line, a good running back. And eventually, when it mattered the most, that rushing attack came through, and Miami is now considered a national title contender. And just like they delivered for their team, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday that you order. Stack it up all season long, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, and the promo period runs through November the 18th. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients, with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste in just a tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. My favorite thing about this, something I've struggled in my life with, is energy crashes. I've tried a lot of sports drinks in my life, a lot of stuff just to give me that energy in the morning because I'm not a morning person, but eventually the cost is you crash at the end of the day. But with 5-Hour Energy shots, again, no sugar, and that means no crashes. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com. Or you can get them on Amazon today. Wrapping things up here on Locked On SMU, your team every single day, the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, bye week goal numero cuatro, number 4. And if you don't remember, let's go back through our bye week goals that I've had. Number 1, Kevin Jennings, get him healthy. Number 2, defense, just settle in, reset, and you're going to be good. Number 3, figure out this damn kicking situation because it's an embarrassment. And number 4 today, get a head start. Get a head start on Syracuse. Now, we know Syracuse isn't going to be without Steve Angeli for the rest of the season. He popped an Achilles, so he's done. So it'll be Ricky Collins Jr., who will presumably be behind center when the Orange come to DFW to take on SMU to open conference play. Now, here's the thing. SMU gets an advantage here because Syracuse is not off this week. The Orange hosts Duke to open up the conference slate for them. So, they're going to be focused on the Blue Devils and Darian Mensah and that crew over there. But if you're SMU, you can get you a little bit of an advantage. And what does that advantage look like? Because I can talk to you about the coaching and all that, and they are going to get, a little bit of a scheduling break because now you got to figure out a different dude than you were already starting to prep for with Angeli, who was off to a great start. I mean, it sucks that he's going to miss the rest of the year because he was one of the nation's leading passers, if not the leading passer in the country before he went down. But it's going to be Ricky Collins Jr. now. So aside from the typical, all right, we got 2 weeks to prepare for this opponent, what else does getting a head start look like? And I want to focus on the players. I want to focus on the players because you have your department that's out there scouting your future opponents, but players can't do that. They can't do it with recovery, which SMU's doing a lot of, and rehab and getting healthy and then practicing and prepping for said current opponent. But I think, especially, really on both sides, if SMU's players get a chance to just sit back and watch some football, I think that does their mentals so well. I think it really, really is going to be beneficial for them mentally to just be able to sit back and be learning your new roles and settling into those and just trying to reset from what you put on tape early in the season while also watching an opponent. I think that's going to be very noteworthy. Because here's the thing with Syracuse. They're going to present a challenge. Good defensive line, and Scott Symons at his presser earlier today said, yeah, they've got 3 really good 4 receivers. So these dudes are going to have to figure out how we're going to stop these dudes. And look, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to pretend like I know a whole heck of a lot about Ricky Collins Jr. I would assume the guy can spin it. I'm going to assume the guy can spin it somewhat. And a quarterback's confidence only grows when he knows, I got some pretty good players to throw the ball to. So I'm going to rip it. Like, that would make you more confident, too, as a backup now, starting quarterback. So whatever head start they can get, and you can get closer to being 1-0, because then that's what it's about. Be 1-0 every week, especially this week because everybody's 0-0 going into conference play. So I think if they are able to get some kind of a head start, and head starts, again, do not always mean strategically. Physically, they will not have played a game in 2 weeks. That gives you some sort of a heads up of an upper leg over Syracuse. You're also going to you will have been home for the longest time. By the time that game comes around, SMU will not have left the state of Texas since the Missouri State game, which was on, if I can find the exact date, September 13th. So they will have not left the state in almost a month when that game rolls around. So the legs are going to be incredibly, incredibly fresh. Syracuse will be coming over from Syracuse, New York. That's a big deal. So there are advantages here that SMU has been presented with. You just have to be able to take advantage of them. But you got to hone in and do your stuff. And I think just being able to slow down for this team, especially this team, because this team has basically had the pressure of, all right, we got to prove that whatever SMU did last year wasn't a fluke. We got to prove that us being on the rise and Coach Lashley being a really intriguing, polarizing coach to discuss, we got to prove all of that isn't fake and wasn't a mirage. And sometimes with that on your mind, that can do wonders on you mentally, and not in a good way. Like, that can take a toll. So if they're able to just step back and slow down and say, all right, now we really got to just buckle in and let's just play football. Let's settle into new roles, get comfortable with our new leadership, everybody get as healthy as you're going to be for the rest of the year, good things can start to happen. I'm a believer that good things can happen under those circumstances, but you have to take advantage of the head start you get. And also, bye week right before conference play, that's good. That's good right there. You have an extra week to prepare to try to be 1-0. And you get to 1-0, you know how many teams in the conference are 1-0? Only half after week 1. Only half are. So that's what you got to be. And any advantage that you can take with the week off prior should be embraced. I know I'm saying something that's totally, totally obvious, but sometimes nailing the simple stuff can be what kicks you over the top. Sometimes that's what it is. That'll do it for Locked On SMU today here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. I hope you didn't miss it, but if you did, make sure you check out Locked On and Fire TV's College Football Kickoff. It's a college football preview that only Locked On can do. Locked On Big 12's Drake Toll, Gary Patterson, and Jesse Holly, along with local experts around the country, host College Football Kickoff, presented by Locked On Fire TV. Make sure you catch it every Thursday night throughout the season on Fire TV. We'll talk to you on Monday when we start to really hone in and prepare for the Orange of Syracuse and open up conference play in the 2025 season. Take it easy, everybody.